What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my two great co-hosts, Fede Perez and Ralph Hanna. And guys, here we are. It's August 16th. It's been a week full of holidays, actually. The day of Asuncion was yesterday. The Flag Day as well was also the other day as well. So it's been a big week in Paraguay. Also a special day today on August 16th. Happy 43rd birthday to Roque Santa Cruz. On the day that the Premier League is back as well. And I think it's a special time for Paraguayan football as a whole because, even though we've been used to seeing some Paraguayans here and there, we are going to probably have to see another one finally make his mark as some big news happened this week regarding one particular player who will possibly join who will possibly have his signing made official. Obviously, heading into this week as well, we look at what's been going on with the national team because, of course, we finally have a new coach. Gustavo Alfaro is officially in Paraguay. He will become the new manager of Paraguay, the third one in almost a year for Paraguay. Let's see if he can turn around this ship of what's been going on in the qualifiers. Libertad Sudamericana fought it off in the Sudamericana knockout stages to see which Paraguayan team can make it to the quarterfinals. It was a very interesting game, and I'm curious to see what you guys think. And of course, the big one this weekend, the Superclasico is back. Cerro Porteño versus Olimpia, two teams who have really had, I'd say, differing starts. You would say in the start of the Clausura, but it goes as always an important one. So yeah, I mean, Fede, for you, based over there in Paraguay, it's been a busy week. It's been a busy week, especially now heading into we're already in mid-August and we're already thinking about, talking about all these Paraguayan players, be it abroad, be it at home, with the new manager. Qualifiers are right there, right along the way. They're a few weeks away before the big games between Uruguay and Brazil. And yeah, it's finally at least good to see that Paraguay have officially found a manager. At least let's start out with that. We finally have a good manager. We'll talk about Gustavo Alfaro in a second, but at least from your initial perspective, it's good to have some sort of stability.
Yeah, I don't get the feeling you're that happy, but you're happy we have a manager. Hi, Roberto. Hi to Ralph. Hi to everyone listening to Guarani Vision. It's great to be back. Yeah, all sorts of news really this last couple of days. So much happened with Sudamericana coming back. The Libertadores also, even though we don't have any Paraguayan teams there anymore, we do have two in Sudamericana. Looking forward, one of them might actually face off Boca, which is a big team here in South America. So looking forward to that situation. Will it be Ameliano? Will it be Libertad? Nobody has an advantage after the first game. But in the local league, it was a stunning last week, I would say, with the outstanding performance, stunning even, from Olimpia against Libertad, the reigning champion. And this just opens up the game, really, in the local league, just to see what the big teams are doing. And they're going to clash against each other now in the Superclasico. And this is going to be a wonderful one. And hopefully it's not a tie again, because we've been tie lately with the Superclasico. So I'm really hoping that one of these two big teams win it so they can really put themselves in a good position to be probably the next championship. They're starting to have those kind of championship runs that I love to see in the big teams, and we're definitely going to talk about that preview. But people should know by now, should know us. We've been doing this podcast for a long time. They should know me. When the Rojas is here present, when the Roja is behind me, or when I have it on, is because we're going to talk about the Roja. And we must say the eagle has landed, Roberto, or we could say the lettuce has landed also, because I believe that's his nickname. It's a weird nickname. We can talk about that. Gustavo Alfaro, yeah, finally. We faced him. We faced his Costa Rica over a little more than a month ago. It's incredible, right? I have that scene going back and forward in my head, of him picking up our players after the game. Everybody was just thrown out there in the grass. They couldn't believe that we've been eliminated and that we couldn't beat Costa Rica. And it was Alfaro going into the field, picking up our players. And that was the last image I have of our team in Copa America, and it was him. And now he's going to be the guy that's going to try to lead the way to the World Cup 2026. Football is just that crazy, but we got to talk about his style, what he might actually bring to the national team, and everything that people are actually expecting from a very interesting character, I would even say, from Gustavo Alfaro.
Yeah, and of course the gentleman that scored Paraguay's last goal, and Ralph, you were there in Austin for that game, is Ramon Sosa. So yeah, it kind of feels like in this week alone, you got the two big names from that game. The manager that helped Costa Rica win and the Paraguayan player who scored that goal. They've both been in the news, and they get to finally get to work with each other in a couple of weeks. But yeah, before we go into that, it is going to be a big week here for Paraguayan football as a whole, from a local level, from an international level, and from a I guess from also a administrative level as well.
Yeah, that's right. So much going on, right? Because you have the Superclasico, and it's going to be a very good Superclasico with Olimpia in really good form, and Cerro trying to stop them, and really it could be a title race between those two with no Libertad. So that's a change there. Then we've got the announcement that we got yesterday that Gustavo Alfaro is 100% confirmed. It was one of those things that pretty much, even like Fede was saying, on the pitch in Austin, it was starting that this could happen. Garnero was gone in that moment. Pretty much, he had said so in his press conference as we sat there underneath the stadium. It was all very dark, and he like marched off down the dark tunnel, and you kind of thought he's not coming back, and so it has been. Then Alfaro left Costa Rica, so we're like, okay, it looks like this is happening now, and then finally we're gonna have the press conference just in a few hours after we record right now. And mentioning Ramon Sosa, yeah, this is a player that really, I think, started to raise eyebrows with some of his performance at the international level, right? Because there was always a question over could he do it at a higher level, and he became, through injury to Enciso more than anything, he became one of the most important players in the early World Cup qualifiers. And then we saw him kick on in the Copa America playing with Enciso. He gives him an assist, remember, in the game against Colombia. And then he scores his first goal for the national team in that match against Costa Rica. And this is a player whose star has just kept rising. And of course, Roberto, we shouldn't forget that you and I, we saw him make his debut back in Miami, the game against Colombia, the friendly. That was actually his Paraguayan debut, and it wasn't that long ago. What are we talking about, in 2022?
Yeah, the day before the World Cup started, actually, so little less than 2 years ago.
There you go. Yeah, so it's been a huge 2 years, I think, for Sosa, who, well, we'll talk about him in more detail, but I think he was one of those players that his career almost ended because of the pandemic, because when the clubs weren't able to play, those very young players, if they hadn't really got a contract, they were going to have to go and sell food or do anything to try and make some money. And he just about kept afloat because he just made his debut before the pandemic started. And I think that's, that helped him have his career. And from there, like we're saying, he's just gone on and on and on and keeps overcoming all the challenges that he's faced.
Well, let's start with that, because obviously the big news that happened this week, that it wasn't Talleres against River Plate. Everyone was thinking that when Talleres had made that announcement that Ramon Sosa was going to be made available to play that game, he goes on strike. Essentially, he's like, no, I don't want to, and essentially that kind of really forced his move to England, because of course the other day we saw him traveling to England. He's undergoing his medical. He should be announced at any time. So far, 11.7 million euros for him. I think last I checked, he'd be probably the fifth most expensive Paraguayan in history. And I want to go to Fede on this one because, of course, it's another Paraguayan playing in the Premier League. And like Ralph has said, and I think like what we have mentioned, this rise has just been incredible. This is a kid that plays some 250 kilometers from the city of Asunción, the capital city of Asunción, playing in Maracanã, playing in Canindeyú, which is right on the border of the Brazilian border. He had this big jump for me. First of all, he started at Tempetaru. That was kind of where he made his first start. Then he made the jump to River Plate in Asunción right before the pandemic. He made his jump to then Olimpia, where he did so well. Made the jump to Argentina, to Gimnasia, and then at Talleres, and now he's off to Nottingham Forest. I mean, it's incredible. And of course, he just made his Paraguay debut a little less than 2 years ago. He's never even played at youth level. So honestly, and I've been fortunate enough to speak to a lot of people involved at Nottingham, or at least like the fans, journalists, whatever. And I just keep telling him, like, the circumstances that he's been through from the beginning all the way to now, I don't think he should have never even been a professional player, let alone play in the Premier League. I mean, it's been a good rise, and I think in comparison to what we see from Enciso, from Almiron, even Enzo Gonzalez, Diego Gomez as well, which is more than likely going to join Brighton. The Ramon Sosa story is just, one in a million, really, of the opportunities that he's been to. And I'm happy to see him go there. I think it's the right move at the right time, at the perfect moment that he's being, highly touted by so many big teams in Europe. He gets his move and he's off to the Premier League.
Yeah, I totally get your read about this, the whole story, Roberto. But I always think that in football, particularly, the best players come out of those situations. And we see it in Brazil all the time, right? I mean, the best players in the world. I mean, Vinicius Jr. right now in Real Madrid. Look at his situation when he was a kid, and Ramon Sosa and most of these guys, yeah, they probably didn't have the best childhood where they were when they were growing up. It was probably really hard for them, and that just makes it even more special, I believe. The story, everything behind it, the hard work, but physically, I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen pictures when he was playing back in Maracanã, or when he was just starting out in Tibetari. He was already that big. I mean, physically, he was always making a difference. And I mean, remember he was playing his first games in first division, especially. Obviously, he caught a lot of people's attention when he started playing in Olimpia after playing for River Plate. But I remember his posture in the field. I mean, he wanted to look like a Cristiano Ronaldo or something like that, always standing up straight and trying to have his own style also. And I always like those kind of players because they always trying to bring their own personality into the pitch. And you could see that he was a different kind of player. And even the people around him, when he was already young, they were already saying, no, this is a kid that's really going to go to high places. But, going to the Premier League, that's the dream come true, especially for our South American players, for our Paraguayan players. And I love seeing these stories ending this way. It's not the end, because hopefully he still has more and more to do in the Premier League. I don't know if Nottingham Forest was the place that he wanted to go when negotiations started, when people were starting to talk around him that he was going to go to the European football. The situation was way too long. The negotiations were way too long. This was not good for the player. I was told that the player was kind of tormented about the situation these last couple of weeks. He did not have a good time about it. And that's why he told the Talleres, his former now club, I'm not going to play for you guys anymore. I'm not going to play against River Plate, the Libertadores. I'm not going to play that game. Don't put me in that situation. And they put him on that situation because they wanted him to play that game. And that's not what you're supposed to do with a player that's worth that much money, the amount that you mentioned, Roberto. And right before probably the biggest sell in your club's history. I don't know if they would have done that with an Argentinian. And I didn't like that situation. I didn't like the way they handled the player. Thankfully, he's now he already did the medical stuff. He's going to be announced in the next couple of hours. The story is over. He's going to play his European. He's going to have that dream come true. And I'm just happy for him, Roberto. This is a very special kid. I think he has so much ahead of him. And he looks like a Premier League player, guys. I don't know what you guys think. I don't know if he's going to have an important role in Nottingham Forest. I want to hear Rob's side of it. I want to know if he's going to play in a team that can actually do something in this Premier League season, or he's going to fight for relegation. I don't know what's in front of Ramon Sosa now as he heads into this Nottingham Forest locker room. He didn't do the preseason there, but he's got to play right away, Ralph, and hopefully he gets that chance right away.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the first thing to pick up on when you said about physically, that's really important for fans of the show that maybe have thought about other Paraguayans that have gone. So you have, well, even Almiron, Ojeda, Enzo Gonzalez, and Ciso, they're all shorter than Ramon Sosa. So Ramon Sosa is a winger, but he's not this like tiny winger that maybe you're thinking of when you maybe think of Enciso. Enciso's 5'6", Ramon is 5'10", for example. So immediately there's a big difference there, like you were mentioning. And then the point about the whole Talleres situation, remember back in January, teams were after him. I think Everton was one of the teams that was mentioned. And Talleres said, give us 6 more months. Give us 6 more months of you, and then we're going to let you go in the summer, or the winter in Argentina, Paraguay, but the summer over here. And so that was always a deal. And that's why things were getting so tense in these last couple of weeks, because I think Ramon was saying, well, hold on, guys, like we had this agreement. that you were going to let me go because we know this team's interested. Why are you holding out? And what are you holding out for, right? Is it more money? Was it commissions for people? Who knows? But that, as that dragged on, I think he was mostly frustrated thinking that I gave you these extra 6 months. I risked getting injured. I was playing brilliantly because he's been one of their best players. And so now it was time for the club to help. And then in terms of Forest, well, of course, like the first thing that comes to mind is Brian Ojeda. Brian Ojeda went as a young player to Nottingham Forest and basically never played a game. But it's a totally different situation. When he was signed under a different manager, that manager left. Cooper came in. Cooper didn't obviously rate him and think he was ready. And he went out on loan and then he's ended up in MLS. In the case of Ramon Sosa, I think Nuno Espirito Santo it wants him. That's why he's paying all this money, right? It also helps the Portuguese, Spanish, and there's a lot more South American players now than I think there was when Brian Ojeda moved. So I think that will help a bit. He has Enzo Gonzalez down the road. Wolves and Nottingham is not that far away. So I think there's a few things that makes this gives him like a better, let's say, environment to be moving into. And then I think, of course, there is that last 6 months in Talleres, which has been huge for him off the pitch as well. When Ramon Sosa makes his debut in Paraguay at River Plate and they do an interview with him, Tigo Sports, after the game, he doesn't speak in Spanish. He speaks in Guarani because he wasn't so comfortable. When Roberto and I see him outside the mix zone after his debut, he didn't want to speak to us because he was too shy. He just made his debut and he didn't want to speak. When he first goes to Argentina, people made fun of him because he spoke Spanish with an Argentinian accent, because really it was the first time he was speaking Spanish to camera confidently. And so it was coming out almost like an Argentinian because he's mimicking the people there. So these last 6 months, he's become a star at Talleres. He knows he's a star. He knows he's going to go, and his confidence, he's just a different person. If you compare him in front of camera when he was in Olimpia or River Plate to then, he's a totally different person. So he's matured there. And that's really, I think, probably if I was Nottingham Forest, I'd be looking as much as that as is on field, because I'd be like, okay, this guy looks like now he's ready to make the jump. Not like, again, bringing it back to Brian Ojeda, not like Ojeda that he just went straight from Olimpia to Nottingham Forest without that kind of experience of being a star, but of also having to be on camera, having to kind of live in a different environment, which happened obviously in Argentina. So all of that points to me that I think we're in an exciting moment. We have to see it. Probably we'll see him after the international break. This is usually what happens with new signings in the Premier League. I don't think he'll play. We'll have the international break. He'll come back, and then it's like another preseason reset for everybody. And then I think we might see him get some games. And I'm sure they will try him at the beginning. After, in January, February, if they're fighting relegation, he's the kind of player that maybe he's not going to get as many games. But for now, they've spent the money. I'm sure they're going to be looking to give him some minutes on the pitch.
And what better way, I guess, I mean, Ralph, just looking at the schedule that Nottingham have, what better way possibly for him to make his debut than in the EFL Cup, which is like the second tier domestic cup against Newcastle United Van Miron. So that could be a possible way of saying welcome to English football. But I guess moving on to that, it is a lot of money in their sense of getting someone of that age from Argentina, Paraguayan as well. What are your expectations for him? Because I think now, and I think for us as well as Paraguayan fans, him coming to the Premier League will give him a big boost in terms of what he's been able to learn and how that can help through onto the national team, because obviously he joins right before these big games against Uruguay and Brazil. So, and of course the entire rest of the year, he has this as well with the 4 remaining qualifiers. So just what your expectations of him as well, and what would you deem as like a successful season for him in his first time in English football, I guess. And I want Fede's answer as well, because before I give you mine.
I think for me, a successful season is that he gets regular minutes, not necessarily starts and plays every game, but he's a regular feature on the squad, and that he doesn't get injured. That's like the key thing we're seeing with a lot of players when they're making this jump is they can really struggle with injury. And Cesar's going to miss the start of the season through injury. Enzo Gonzalez, of course, very unfortunate. It was in-game situation, the ACL at the Olympics. But a lot is just, can you keep yourself fit? Diego Gomez, who was suffered an injury at Inter Miami, and he just come back ahead of the Olympics. So I think really if he can stay fit and just have regular minutes, be someone that's coming on in the 60th minute, the 70th minute. I don't know if he will start every single game, but having him there and building that up so he's ready for, say, next season, that would be huge.
Yeah, he's coming into the Premier League, 24 years old. I think he can still make a next jump to a bigger team. So I'm hoping that he has a great season, guys. I mean, I just hope that he can play just as we were watching him in Talleres. I think, you know, he's just gaining more and more experience. I mean, let's not forget, he just had his first Copa America, and he had a pretty good time there also. I mean, he showed that he's in that quality. He showed that he has that level to play against those kind of players. So I'm just hoping that he just keeps on evolving as a player, and we just keep seeing new stuff from him. I mean, I think he can still gain more and more, and the ceiling is just so far above him still, even though he's 24. I mean, that's the expectation I have. I think he's just such an exciting player, and he's so charismatic, guys. I mean, he just looks like such a fun guy to be around. He's always on social media with Talleres, not so much on his personal social media, but just as Ralph said, he is kind of a shy guy, maybe in front of the cameras, but you can see that in the locker room. He's fun to be around. His teammates really like him, and hopefully he can be that guy also in a Premier League locker room, right? I do think there's going to be way more spotlights on top of him, and he's never had that. Even people here in Paraguay are really going to be are going to want to watch and see every single minute of his action in Premier League. So hopefully that pressure doesn't get to him at any moment in this season, Roberto.
Yeah,
what do you think about it?
Yeah, no, I agree on all your points that both of you guys made. I think as well, like he's in a situation where Nottingham, they're not really fighting for anything big. I think they're gonna be in that position of not trying to get relegated because the Premier League is such a very hard league and you have so many good teams out there. Even with the 3 promoted teams, they've kind of escaped relegation these last few seasons, and I think it's going to be a similar case for them. Who knows? Maybe they actually have a really good start, because I think that was said for Wolves. Enzo didn't play those games, but the same thing happened for them, where they were a team that kind of were trying to fight off not getting relegated. They ended up having a really good push. Same for Almiron, when he was there, everyone was thinking that he would be the one, or at least like his team would be fighting off relegation. Of course, they've changed managers, new players, and now they've obviously made it into the top tier of English football. Same for Enciso, him playing and helping them qualify for Europe for the first time. So maybe this is the case for Ramon. Maybe Ramon gets some luck in them and springs it on them, and where he becomes a vital player. And again, I think the crucial thing is if he performs well, I think that helps a lot of us, and also helps raise the stock, because that's what ultimately made this move happen. If it wasn't for your Almirons and your Encisos, Ramon would have never went. And I think, yeah, being in the best league helps. And hopefully that with his performances, if he does well, that it opens the door for other Paraguayans, because I think that's ultimately what we want. Is we want to see, and as we segue now to Gustavo Alfaro, I think ultimately we have a lot of players out there that look that they can make the jump to Europe, and we need that, because we don't have a lot of them playing in Europe. A lot of them are still based in MLS or Latin America as a whole, and I think we need to hopefully change that, and that someone like Ramon can help open the doors for other Paraguayans as well. So yeah, I hope he does well, and I feel confident that he will. I genuinely think he's in a site where he can play a lot of minutes, especially for the money that they spent on him. And yeah, I think he'll do well. I'm rooting for him. I really do hope that he does very well, as both of you guys hopefully. Maybe not Ralph against Arsenal. Maybe that's a whole different thing, because we saw Enciso scored against Brighton. Enciso scored against Arsenal at the Emirates. That kind of effectively ended their Premier League title chances. I don't know if you want to celebrate a Ramon Sosa goal against Arsenal in a title race, man. Is that what you feel, or you feel like, nah, just let him do it?
Well, as you guys probably know, I'm part of the Arsenal Paraguay supporters club. So we've got about 80, 90 members signed up for this season. So we'll do a poll and see, would you celebrate a Ramon Sosa goal against Arsenal?
Yeah, don't put him on the spot like that, Roberto. He has to be with his Arsenal friends later. Don't put him on the spot like
I
that.
mean, the same question would be for Almiron or for Enciso or for Diego Gomez. I mean, hey, you got those are the circumstances you have, man. Those are the situations that people are in. But let's not dive into that too much. Let's go into what also happened this week is the arrival of another big important piece coming into Paraguayan football is Gustavo Alfaro. Gustavo Alfaro is going to be the next coach of the Paraguay national team, the third one in 11 months. Today is his presentation. And yeah, this is a, I mean, again, I think we've kind of suffered this sort of like apathy. I'll go to Fede on this one first because I think we're in the situation where, look, we're right in the middle of a World Cup qualifying spot, position. They're in the final spots of the playoff round. The games are just going to get tougher, and we've already dealt with two different managers in 6 games. The bar is really low, really, when it comes to the national team, and I think someone like Alfaro, I think of the three that we've had, he's the best one because of what he was able to. Because one, he has a proven international track record in comparison to Garnedo and Barros-Schelotto, so he has that to his favor. But in the sense of him, and I think this is something that kind of favors him more, is that because of the position that Paraguay have been in the last year or so, they get results immediately. He'll easily be adored. So I think it's a question of just get the results that you need, get the results that will help them be in a position to qualify. And of course, it just depends on what the players you use as well. If indeed he will adhere to some of the players that do need a spot in the national team, especially from what we saw as well from the Olympics. There's a big pool now, and I think that pool has been bigger of what we saw in the Olympics in France.
Yeah, obviously, when a new coach comes in, everybody's all the cameras are there at the airport. That they've been there for a couple of days. We've been waiting for him for almost a week now. After we knew that it was official, we've been waiting. I think ever since August actually started for that money transfer to be done from the FA to the Costa Rica Federation, so they could let go of the manager that they actually had. And now finally we know that his head has been there, probably thinking about Paraguay. He's been working. He hasn't been working for Costa Rica. Let's be honest about the situation. I mean, during the whole Olympics, he was watching those games. He knew what was what was coming, and I think that's important, because we haven't lost any time in that sense. He's been thinking about what he can do in these upcoming games, even though, just like you said, Roberto, I mean, it's just all about results right now. It sounds so easy, right? Get a couple wins, get a couple of ties, get something out of this team, but nobody has been able to do that. The last coaches have just come and gone. They've gained experience, but they left absolutely nothing. So just like you said, I think everybody was expecting in this decision making that it needed to be an experienced coach. I mean, these are the only names that were thrown out there: Peckerman, Felipe Scolari, and Alfaro. I mean, it was never really more than those three names, I believe, and those are very experienced coaches. And I believe he's probably one of the oldest one that has come into this locker room lately. He's over 60 now, close to 70 even. So I don't know how he's going to manage that situation, because he's going to have to lead the way for very young players, just as you said, right? I mean, going forward, not maybe just these two games that are coming up against Brazil and Uruguay, but after that, I do think he's going to look into the evolution of these players that he saw at the Olympics, see where they stand, and maybe start calling them up and giving them an opportunity. I don't know if he's going to do that right away. I'm going to wait for that list to really see what his strategy is going to be around this situation. But he managed Ecuador. He was with Costa Rica not long ago, and he's going to play against Brazil. He's going to manage against Brazil. He already analyzed that team, so he has an advantage in a certain way. And he analyzed Paraguay during the Copa America, so he knows pretty much what he's going into. I don't know if he knows the situation with the country, the pressure that the players have on their shoulders. those experienced players on the locker room. That's something that has kind of been a shock or a problem for many of the coaches that have tried to pick up the situation. I think Garnero wasn't able to do that either. I've heard things about Gustavo Alfaro. He's quite a character. I don't know how he's gonna have that relationship with the players. I've heard that he's gonna have somebody has been working here for a very long time, like Paulo Rosso, which is somebody that used to work for Tata Martino. I think he's going to be an assistant coach. I think he's going to work very close to him. And Paulo Rosso was with the team in the Olympics, so I think that's also an advantage. I mean, Alfaro's a very smart guy. He knows what he's coming into, and I think he's going to leave his style here. And hopefully that comes in with results, Roberto. I'm not going to put my hopes up until I see this team, until I see a difference. And that's what the people want to see. They want to see something different. They want to see a team that can look like a World Cup sort of team, because so far we don't look like we deserve to be in a World Cup, guys.
Ralph, third time's the charm, right? I mean, hey, what better way to really prove yourself than against Uruguay at Montevideo of Marcelo Bielsa, and then Brazil at home? So what do you think you go from here?
Very much a baptism of fire for Gustavo Alfaro, who, yeah, you said he's old, Fede. He's the oldest coach in over 20 years, because Cesare Maldini, when he came in for the World Cup, he was like almost 70. But other than that, it's a very different approach. We've given up on maybe, the young, idealistic Argentinian coach like Berizzo, or the one who had a good playing career like Barros Schelotto, or the one that did well in Paraguayan football like Garnero. We've gone through those. And now it's like, okay, find a guy that's actually managed at international level. And knowing what we've seen from him, and knowing that he is quite pragmatic, let's say, I don't think he's going to change much for this first squad either. I think he's going to use pretty much the Copa America team, maybe some Olympics guys, but we're not going to see anything crazy. What's going to change, I think, a lot is the mentality of how they play. Remember that game against Paraguay in Austin? Costa Rica scored 2 goals from 2 shots on target, and they didn't have another one after. Then they just defended, frustrated, played without much possession. You know what? It was very similar to how Carlos Jarasaguier was playing in the Olympics. So I think maybe one of the good things we've got is, for those kids coming up into senior team, and a few of them for sure are going to overlap, it won't be too different. I don't think we're gone are the days now of trying to build up from the back. We're not going to see that like we were trying to see through Garnero. I don't think we're going to see Ernesto Caballero, for example, playing in this squad. But let's really see what he can put together in these first games. And it'll be interesting now, the press conference coming up, just to see how he takes on this challenge. Does he name his assistant? Do we see some people with some more experience here? Because like you say, he doesn't have that experience. And of course, already Jose Luis Chilaver was talking yesterday and saying that, these kids all speak Guarani. They want to speak Guarani, and we have nobody now that can do that, because you have Alfaro at the top, and then you have Dusher, and you have Uglesic in the youth team. So you don't really have much Paraguayan. I think we have Diego Gavilan in the under 15s. But apart from that, there's not much Paraguayan. It's a very Argentinian influenced setup at the moment, right through from youth to the senior side. So let's see if they can make that connection. And the big thing for me, is let's see what they do with Julio Enciso, because we need Julio Enciso to be plugged in and engaged with this manager, and that's going to be key going forward.
Yeah, I mean, Fede, this is a situation where, again, I think, and also what we've seen as well, he's a very philosophical guy. We've seen that sometimes in the way that he speaks. My fear is that if it doesn't go well, that they're just going to attack him, or perhaps that his philosophical way is just going to be a smoke selling kind of deal. Again, I think it's necessary to change a little bit of that mentality, because that is important. I think tactically, a lot of managers can do whatever they want. But to get into the psyche of the players, which again, these are players that have been through a lot. They come from different backgrounds. Some of them are playing in Europe. Some of them are not. Some of them have come through, like we said, from the likes of Ramon Sosa, coming from, the hard hitting streets of Candide you from Maracana. You got some, in quotations, middle class players as well. So you have a mix of a lot of different players on this Paraguay team. And I'm curious to see if Alfaro will want to go into the psyche, or if he wants to be philosophical in the way, because I don't think Paraguay has had such a manager that is so philosophical and inspirational in quite some time. We haven't had that in a while.
Yeah, but we have had several Argentinian coaches, and this is something that Paraguayans don't like that much. Those long press conference when the Argentinian starts talking, and he thinks that he knows everything, and he's teaching the Paraguayan people something new. Paraguayans don't like that, they don't like to be mistreated. Hopefully Alfaro knows how to click right away with the people in that sense also, and really connect with the people, which is something that I believe the last coaches have not been able to do also, right? Put the people with the players, put them by their side. And we need that right now. We need that push from the people, because we have a new generation, we have new players, and they kind of need that love, from their fans, and hopefully that comes with the results also. But I do think the coach can kind of help in a certain sense with his words and what he says in these first press conference, to kind of conquer the Paraguayan people, because you really need them by your side for what he's going to try to do. And because the last coaches had really had a hard time in that sense. But I love what you mentioned, Roberto, because as soon as I heard Gustavo Alfaro is going to be the coach of our national team, obviously I've been in this business for quite a long time, and I started calling different colleagues that I have in Costa Rica, trying to find out more details about, just how he's been working lately, what he did with this team during the Copa America. And something that caught my attention was just that you mentioned. He actually took a psychologist with the team, and he had them there day by day. I mean, and this is somebody that's been working with him, I believe, ever since he managed Boca Juniors back in the day. He took him to the Ecuador squad. He took him now to the Copa America with Costa Rica. And I believe he's going to come and work with our national team also. Garnero was not working with a psychologist. He was not working on that mental strength of the players, or that I don't know the right term, but I love to say that it's brain and science together. It's a lot of that lately in the football. We see it. All the coaches have it in their staff, and they work on that situation. And you really need to pick up our Paraguayan players. They've been under that pressure, and they have not been able to handle it. And just like I mentioned, there's a lot of experienced players: Almiron, Gustavo Gomez. You need to pick those guys up. And how are you going to do that? I think that's one of the biggest challenges that Gustavo Alfaro has ahead of him. How are you going to have those experienced players contribute with the young players and have them come together? That did not happen in the Copa America. Who's going to be the new captain? What's Enciso's role going to be? There's so many questions ahead of what Gustavo Alfaro has to do. But what do you think, Ralph? What do you think are the first things that he has to do, guys?
The psychology part and the mentality is really interesting, because there's always this kind of stereotype that Paraguay doesn't have enough leaders, right? It's like, oh, since Chile, since that team, we don't have leaders. But now you have Gustavo Gomez, captain of Palmeiras. You have Villasante is captaining Gremio pretty much. He's leading the team. You have Julian Enciso is this natural-born leader. You have Fabian Balbuena, the new captain. So you have Almiron, who's taken
Diego Gomez, who just captained them in the Olympics, and
Diego Gomez captain in the Olympics. So you have now this group of players that are leaders. They are able to do it, or at least at club level or at youth level. So it's a question of just bringing that together in the national team. Maybe even the difficulty for Alvaro is going to be also like with these egos, how do you get them all together? Because, for example, like Ramon Sosa and Julian Enciso are like this. They're friends, they're together all the time. Ramon Sosa is after Almiron's place. I mean, it's pretty much both are not going to play. So how do you manage some of these tensions? We have Balbuena was captain instead of Gustavo Gomez, and Gomez didn't play a minute. So it's actually some of this different. Now you have big characters. How are you going to manage all of them? So I think the psychology part is fascinating for me to see if that can make a difference, especially in these first two games, which are so difficult.
so little time as well. We're rounding off about a little less than 3 weeks before that game against Uruguay. So you're gonna, by the time Alfaro gets to meet these players for the first time, it's gonna be not for some time, Fed. It's not like where Daniel Garnero had his players for quite some time before the Copa America. This is really like Ralph had said, just to close it out, a baptism of fire. But Alfaro, if he wants to prove these doubters wrong, he's gonna have to get results, and he's got to get them in a position where, you know, I'm thinking straightforward, but let's say they snatch a result in Uruguay and then they get something against Brazil. That's a wonderful way to start your managerial career in Paraguay. And that's like, okay, this is the guy. We can trust this guy.
Yeah, unless Alfaro fell in love with a certain player while he was watching all these Paraguayan games, in the Olympics or the local league, and he takes a new name into the squad, or he surprises us with a new name. I think, just like Rafa was saying, he might go with the same list. He might go with the same starting lineup that we saw in the Copa America. I don't know. He might know a couple of players a bit more. Like, I saw him hugging with Cacu Romero, which is a player that barely played in the Copa America. He hasn't had an important role in our team. I don't know if he's going to have more options now. I mean, obviously, if you were on the squad and you didn't have that much playing time with Garnero, you're probably smiling now, thinking, "Oh, hey, it might be my chance now." But I don't know if that's really going to happen in these first two games. I do think the roles are going to change. I do think the strategy is going to be totally different. I know he managed a couple of Paraguayans along his career. I don't know which guys you remember. I remember Junior Alonso.
Cacu Romero, like you said, he coached him.
Oh, Cacu, Huracan. Oh, that's where he knew him from. And I remember Junior Alonso from Boca Juniors. Junior wasn't an important player in this team, in this squad, in the Copa America. So, those are players that are probably looking forward and saying, "Hey, I know this coach. He might put me on now." So that also happens behind the scenes, and I'm really looking forward to seeing a difference, and hopefully not having a stubborn coach that just wants to put the same players and sits with the same players and put the best ones out there, please.
He's got to be risky. That, as much as fans are not going to like it, or pundits or whatever, he's got to take it. And if that's the risk that one has to take to get results and win games to qualify, do it. Might as well do it. So we'll have to wait and see. Of course, today at the time of recording is his press conference. I'm sure all of us are going to be expectant of what he's going to say, how he can impress us, his first impressions. Hopefully it's a good one, as we switch gears to now what's going on in the local league, because of course we go into the Sudamericana with what we saw between Libertad and Emiliano, really a big game, Ralph, in the sense of just a lot of pressure has been given on Libertad at the moment. They haven't been performing well in the Clausura for once. That's a good sign for a lot of the teams out there. So they go into this big game against Emiliano, which, like we've always been saying for quite some time, Emilianos just seem to always have their number, or at least for a lot of teams' number, because they've kind of been this kind of dark horse or bogey team that we always have been seeing that just tends to get results and punch above their weight. They've been doing that in the local league, winning the Copa Paraguay and all that. But it was an early goal from Samudi, Alejandro Samudi. It was a big mix up in the box, and then it ended up going into the back of the net, the first goal. And it actually just started really badly. Nestor Jimenez actually went out early in the 12th minute. Ariel Galeano makes his changes in the second half, made big changes actually. And then it was Matias Espinosa from an assist from the guy that kind of missed out in that game against Egypt in the Olympics, Marcelo Fernandez. He's continuing to do well now with what he's put in the Olympics. He's kind of taken that form back to Libertad and the Sudamericana. So it ends as a 1-1 draw in the first leg. But boy, Libertad really needs to do better than that, because they were dominating everything: possession, total shots, big chances, everything that you could see from what I saw, and they could only snatch a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, big pressure on Galeano, I think, ever since he took over, even when he won the league, and even more now that Dani Garnero was sacked by the Albiroja, because there's always this idea of, well, let's just bring Garnero back because he won everything with Libertad. So that he's kind of like, this shadow that looms over Galeano. For as much as he wants to do things, I think everybody's wondering about what could happen with Garnero. And that becomes highlighted even more when you lose 4-0 to Olimpia, which is what happened at the weekend, which has become for Libertad their biggest rivalry over these last few years because of the things that went on with Olimpia's president and Horacio Cartes, the things that went on with Roque Santa Cruz leaving Olimpia for Libertad. So that's become such a big game, and to lose that 4-0 is, that was a real surprise. Just as a reminder to people, the last time we saw something similar, Olimpia were losing 4-0 to Libertad at halftime, and the fans got the game suspended. That was in the Copa Paraguay a couple of years ago. That's how big this rivalry is. So he went in, a lot of pressure, like you said, against Emiliano, and things go wrong when Nestor Jimenez injured. Luis Cardoso comes in, and it's actually, for me, Luis Cardoso that does a mistake that allows Zamudio to score, because he's trying to shield the ball, and the goalkeeper's not sure of coming out, and then they just almost let Zamudio come through and score. So you're like, whoa, he's gone. He's not going to survive. But like you said, Libertad have so much quality on that team. He makes some changes at a halftime. But it's the man from Paris, is Marcelo Fernandez, he's not spectacular, but he just has these important contributions at the right time. And that's, there's so many different things you can look at in a player, but ultimately goal contribution. I mean, if you're doing it all the time, then there's something in there. And it's a very clever, hooked kind of overhead pass back into the box after a corner broken down. And like you say, Espinosa equalizes. And so I think they'll go into the second leg. Both teams will go in thinking they can get through. But I think for Libertad, they will feel, okay, we've kind of saved ourselves here just so we can go. We don't have to face an Meliano that's going to defend. We can actually just go in and play that game as we usually would, and hopefully pick them off. I think that's what they'll be thinking. And Meliano will be thinking, hey, we've got the ability to frustrate them. They're gonna play each other the weekend, by the way, in the local league.
That's right.
This time,
3 times in a week. 3 times in a week,
Three
man.
times in a week. I'm sure we'll see totally mixed teams at the weekend. They're not gonna want to show their hand before the second leg, but they'll be sick of each other by this time next week.
It was an interesting game, guys. We got to say, right, neither team headed into this series in their best shape, right? I mean, Emiliano has been losing. They've been on a really bad streak in the local league. I think it's been 6-7 games, and Pedro Sarabia quit on the last local league right before heading into the series against Libertad, and that was kind of weird for me, right? I mean, he quit, and Galeano didn't quit after losing by 4 goals against Olimpia. Libertad doesn't usually fire their coaches. Galeano is there because he got the opportunity, so obviously he wasn't gonna resign. Because he's not gonna get an opportunity like he has in Libertad, so he's gonna try to hold on to it as much as he can, especially after being champion. And he's trying to pick up the team, but you're not seeing that reaction from the players. And look, against Olimpia, he already made 6 changes. He changed it up again against Emiliano. So you're seeing that he's not getting the response from the players. He's not finding the team. He's putting in the experienced players, and he's not getting that response from them. And there are several players that you can see that did not have the best preseason because they have not come in hot into the second part of the tournament. And they are so far behind in the clausura. They don't look like they're going to fight it now after losing against Olimpia. They got to catch up. And after what I saw against Emiliano, backs against the wall, guys. I mean, if you don't get through Emiliano, if you have 2 bad games against this team in the upcoming ones, it's probably going to look really bad for Galeano. The season will probably be over. The year will be over. And we'll be talking about, who's going to stay in this team, who's going to leave, who might want to leave, and who's going to come into this team to reinforce it for next year, because the stars of this team are not showing up. I haven't seen the best from Lorenzo Melgarejo, several other players, and the defense has never been really structured. And it's been more of Emiliano's season the international stage than Libertad's season. And I'm rooting for Libertad. I'm rooting for Emiliano, to be honest with you guys, just because I want to see them go through. Want to see them have a huge year and play against Boca Juniors. I think it'll be even better for them. They'll enjoy it even more. And for Libertad, it just looks like it's coming to an end. After having so much success, they're finally hitting a reality that they're gonna have to wake up from, and they still got time. They still got this next game against Emiliano, but so far I have not liked what Galeano has done with this team in this second part of the year, guys. And about Marcelo Fernandez and Ruben Lescano, watch out for these two names. I think these are the two next big sells coming out of Libertad after what he did in the Olympics, the goals that he scored. And Ruben Lescano, this is a young star that has caught a lot of scouts' attentions. Also, they've been coming in, they've been watching this kid, and he looks like he has a European future ahead of him.
So, with that being said, and I want to go to Fede first, do Libertad choke it and Emiliano actually make the surprise and eliminate them?
They are under such pressure, and Galeano doesn't look like he has that international experience. I think Emiliano could do it, maybe even by penalties, just because of how tight this first match was. There's no home advantage because they're playing both games in Defensores del Chaco. So it's like, okay, let's repeat the game in the same stadium. I'm just like I said, I'm rooting for Emiliano, guys. So I'm gonna go with Emiliano. The surprise of the year, the best Paraguay international team of the year, Emiliano.
It's funny you said penalties because I was thinking the same thing, although I don't know, maybe in penalties, that's where Libertad, just some of the experience comes through. You have Tacuara, you have Roque, you have lots of big players. But I could see another tie. But I think Libertad will go through on penalties.
Right. So I have to break the tie then in this sense. You have Libertad, Rafa's Libertad, Fede has Emiliano. I think when the going gets tough, that means Libertad somehow always find a way to do it. I think Libertad go through on penalties as well. I can't see a world where Libertad don't have this big wake up call of the quality they have. And like, no, we need to do this. We need to go and continue our run in the Sudamericana. So yeah, I'll say Libertad, as much as maybe some people don't want that to happen.
Not even Libertad fans want Libertad to win. They want Daniel Garnero to come back. They want the coach that won it all to come back, Roberto.
Kind of a lose-lose situation then at this point. Because if they win, they're like, oh well, we still have to deal with Galeano, but if they lose, they get eliminated. So yeah, it's not exactly a position that Libertad fans want to be in, but I think the quality of them and like the team that will show up in this case. So I'm going for them as we switch gears to our last segment of the day, the Superclasico, the big one, because certainly Olimpia and Cerro Porteño are coming into two different circumstances. Ralph, and I'll go to you on this one first, because obviously Martin Palermo's side has been on a good run as of late. Cerro Porteño under Manolo has been inconsistent at the most. So it's kind of hot and cold when it comes to both these two teams. But again, with this Superclasico happening so early in the race, it's a game that they have to win. And we say that all throughout the times that we've done this with our predictions. We'll get that shortly, but they need to win. One of these teams need to win, because that's just going to favor them, especially in the unique position that they're in right now, where Libertad are not doing so well, that this is the perfect opportunity for one of these two teams to take advantage and to move ahead as leaders of the Clausura.
Yeah, I mean, Olimpia are doing really well, right? Those 3 wins in a row. They started a bit slowly, and now they've had these 3 wins in a row, and they seem to be getting better. And players are coming in that you knew had quality, but they didn't have minutes. So I'm thinking of Rodney Redes, for example. Like, we knew Rodney Redes was a good player, but he hadn't had so many minutes. The time in Austin, who knows what that did to him mentally, psychologically. But now he's come back. He's starting to make these important moments, and really for them, for Olimpia, that's like what they needed, a player like him, and not having all the attacking, all the creativity, having to go through Derlis Gonzalez, which is what was hurting them, because they were so reliant on him. So you have that from Olimpia. You have Cerro. Yeah, like you say, it's even when Cerro win, like they won against the Sol de America, you're not really convinced. You're kind of, but it's partly Manolo's style. I think they're not particularly, they're very possession based. So sometimes it doesn't look as good when you're not actually doing anything with the ball. And And I think also for Cerro, they are really missing. First it was Bobadilla, then it was Peralta. Well, before that, Santi. Like these central midfielders have just gone. They've never really had one player that can be there and look good. I thought Carrascal actually looked quite good. That was one of his better games recently. And they're very dependent on the moment on Pachi Carrizo. Without Cecilio Dominguez, who's been injured for so long, they really need a good game from Pachi Carrizo for them to have a good game. So it's one of those matches where, yeah, I think for the first time in a while, I would say, I think Olimpia go into it as favorites. They look the better team. What we've seen recently is Cerro have looked the better team, but it's always been a tie. It's actually been a tie the last 6 matches that they played, and Olimpia, though, are unbeaten in 9, so they could go 10 games without losing a Clásico, which for me, historically, I can't even remember since the last time that happened. But it's always a game on itself as well, right? That's something really important to remember. Even if you had nothing to play for in the league, your team you would just say, well, as long as you win the Clásico, you're good, right? I mean, this is like a cup final, and you get 4 of them in a year, and so it does also take on its own kind of I don't know. It's like form isn't always such a big thing when you get into the moment of the game, especially when you're going to have, if you have some young players that are doing their first Clásico. You know, the left back at Cerro, Leon, 17 years old. This will be a huge moment for him. He's probably played a lot of Clásicos in youth level, but this is a different thing in front of a big crowd. So, yeah, it's one of those games. It really could go either way. I know that's a bit of a cliche, but you really do feel that Olimpia looking better, but Cerro maybe have the better side overall if they all play together. So it's going to be a tight one.
It's a big stage for certain players, right? I mean, it's a big game for the best game that you can play here in Paraguayan football, the game that every little kid dreams about playing, especially if they do their youth, if they start out playing in Olimpia or Cerro Porteño, right? I mean, and it is that, and there are a lot of those stories behind it, just like Ralph was saying, the Leon and Cerro Porteño. I'm seeing Hugo Benitez now doing it for Olimpia, being the starting 9, and he's probably been one of the players that caught my attention. I mean, after what I saw from Olimpia against Libertad, if they can do that again, I mean, they are definitely favors. Everybody played everybody played their ass out, and everybody played really well that game. I mean, nobody under a 7 or an 8, I would even say. You know, everybody played really close to a 10. Olympia's coming in hot, and they felt so comfortable lately playing in that stadium. I mean, Cerro has not been able to put that pressure against their rival, right? Ever since Cerro has had their new stadium, they're still yet to beat them and beat them 2 games in a row. And all the Superclásicos have been so tight lately. I've kind of lost my hope that anyone can win. But Olimpia has looked so good. Ronnie Redes, Ralph was just mentioning him. I picked him actually as the best player against Libertad. I picked him as the MVP because he was probably the difference maker. He made an assist. He was all over the place, and it's really nice to see what Palermo has done with this team. I mean, he really put them to work in the preseason, and you can see that he built a new team, and they haven't missed. Derlis Gonzalez was somebody that everybody was expecting to have a tremendous season. It has not been that way, and he really put in a new defense with Junior Barreto coming in for Saul Sacedo, which is somebody that they had to let go because Olimpia needed the money. Olimpia fans were really expecting for this kind of start. I think most Olimpia fans were actually expecting for the team to go bad and have a couple of bad results and Martin Palermo to be sacked, but it has not been that way. The last 2 games have been really good. He has a starting team. He's repeating that team, and he couldn't do that in the Apertura because of the injuries, because everybody wasn't fit. You see Manuel Campazo being so dangerous on set pieces. That's somebody that they're going to have to stop. Cerro also has a very important player on set pieces that came to rescue them against Sudamerica. Ronaldo de Jesus, I don't know if he's going to start. I think that's what Manelo Jimenez has to do now, just that Palermo is doing in Olimpia. He needs to start putting the young players in because those are the ones that are making the difference. No Cecilio Dominguez yet in the season for Cerro Porteño, who was their best player during the Apertura. So you need other players to start stepping up. I think that's been the problem for Cerro. They had so many chances against Sudamerica, but they ended up scoring at the last minutes. The pressure has been on them. They really need to do something in this clausura. I think Olimpia are going to take the Superclasico, guys. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm already doing predictions.
You might
But
as well. Are you saying it? Olimpia win the Superclásico?
I don't like what I'm seeing from this Manolo Jimenez. Cerro Porteño has not looked together. They have so many players. I get that Robert Pires Zamota is coming back. You got Gabriel Aguayo finally ready for action in this clausura. But I just see Olimpia better as a team, playing better. And Richard Ortiz, being the star in the midfield, controlling the tempo, the speed of the game. I think he's going to be very important in that midfield. And I don't know what Manelo is going to do with his midfield, because the other day he had Jorge Morel coming back and he put him on after he won by 5 goals against Luqueña, right? And that was really weird to see. Change the team after probably your best game of the season. I don't know. Manolo Jimenez is in a weird spot right now, taking really weird decisions the way I see it. So Martin Palermo looks like he knows what he's doing now. He's getting the best out of his players. So I'm going with Olimpia just by a goal, guys. But Olimpia is going to win it.
Ralph?
It's just such a change from the years when Chiqui Arce was in charge of Cerro. You always knew the starting 11 for every Clásico. You felt like Cerro were the stable team and Olimpia was in chaos. And now the way Fede mentions it, and you think about it, I wouldn't say Cerro is chaos, but they're very unsettled. Maybe that's a better word. They're very unsettled. They don't have their team. And Olimpia now, with this start they had, and with Palermo picking this team, they seem to be going into it more. Olimpia 4 clean sheets in a row, and I think Cerro don't look like they can score easily. So that does start to tip the balance to Olimpia. But you know what? I know this is crazy, but I think we're gonna get our 7th draw in a row, though. I just have a feeling that you could even get a 0-0. We could even see a 0-0 here. I can't really see Cerro scoring, so I definitely can't see Cerro winning. That's one thing. But I think we'll get a tie.
God, do I have to be the one to break this tiebreaker? Do you want me to say Cerro Porteño on this one? Because we can't. It's not like the Libertad Emiliano game where we have to pick a winner. This one I can say any of 3 choices. Honestly, I think I'm siding with Ralph on this one too. I again, as much as this is, I know it's boring. I know, but come on, Fede. Like, is any team really that? These are super classicals we're talking about. They're always gonna be tough to call. You know this. How many super classicals have we all seen where, with the rare occasion that a team is just expected to blow out the opposition? You don't see that. Usually, we always say, yeah, it's a tight game and stuff like that. Sometimes teams do blow out the opposition. We've seen that with Olimpia. We've seen that with Cerro. But I don't know, man. I know it feels a bit kind of.
Somebody's got to win. There's no taunting if nobody wins, Roberto.
That's the thing. That's the thing. But that's up to them, not to us as pundits. If they're not gonna do it, I hope I'm wrong. I want Cerro to win as a fan. Absolutely. Why wouldn't I?
But I love watching all the memes after the game when somebody wins.
Yeah, well, that's part of the mystique. That's the folklore that you get in Paraguay. But I'm saying a 1-1 draw. I'm gonna say it's a 1-1 draw. It's gonna be very boring. I hope I'm wrong and Cerro do win, but yeah, I just don't see it. I don't know. I mean, if you guys are you confident with your picks? Like Fede, like do you genuinely believe Olimpia will win it? And Ralph,
I was confident after hearing you guys. I was thinking that somebody's going to win, but after hearing you guys, I don't even know why I'm going to go to the stadium. Wow. It's going to be another draw, but
I'm never confident with these things. But if you don't see a goal in the first 15 minutes, I can really see a tie. If someone scores early, like there's a mistake and you see a goal, that could really make it interesting. But otherwise, I could see this really going on like very, very tense.
You guys are rooting for Dos de Mayo. That's the only team in this clausura that wants a tie, because they're going to be happy about that situation. They're going to be first.
Unless Libertad mounts a big comeback, and this is the downfall of the other teams, and Libertad just keep going and going. But we'll have to wait and see. I'm excited for it. We'll have to clip this out and give our predictions, but yeah, that's what we're going with as we close out another great episode of Guarani Vision, a big episode where we've dealt with so many topics. Really looking forward to what we see in the next few weeks, especially as we gear up with the World Cup qualifiers coming very soon. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas. This is Fede Perez and Ralph Hanna. Thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.